you so much. You're going to do great, okay?
Where are you going?
I have to go sit out there while you get to take a nap, okay?
How are you going to come back when the surgery is done?
Yep, I'm going to wait out there the whole time. And as soon as they let me see you, I'll be right there. What's up? Here's a Theo update. I already recorded once, but it was 23 minutes long. And apparently, Isaac thinks you don't want to listen to 23 minutes of me talking about our kids. So, fast version. All right. Sunday night, we check in. Didn't want to check in Sunday night. I wanted to check in Monday before surgery, but that's not how they do it here. And while I do feel like I fight with them on everything, I tried to just give in. Although they wanted us to check in between 2 and 4, and we checked in at 6:30. So that was good. So we checked in. They got us in our private room. The options are private room or 5-person room. 5-person room. 5 people in one hospital room, yes. And you have to have a caregiver. So that's 10 people in one hospital room. The way it works here is instead of having a nurse that does nursey things, you are required to have a full-time caregiver with you at all times to like wipe your butt and like, I don't know, whatever you need. What they would do in America as a nurse. So I just really didn't want to do that. And they keep the hospital rooms so hot. So if you're like in a room with 5 people, you can't open the window. Or like if your kid is like upset and like finally chilled out watching Thomas, but it's loud, like you can't do that. So praise the Lord, we paid the extra and there was one available. So got to our room. They sent us for an x-ray to check his bones, see how they were. So we went and got the x-ray done, came back to the room, let him play for a little bit, and then tried to go to sleep. And I was like, he can go to sleep now, right? And they're like, yeah. I was like, no tests, right? And they're like, what? I'm like, he can sleep, like no more tests? Like, I didn't want them to wake him up if they needed to do something. And they're like, no. Of course, that was wrong. So they came in every 2 hours through the night to take his blood pressure, which I'm like, he's not on medication. He doesn't have blood pressure. He's not sick. Not one time in any of this have they ever taken his blood pressure, but now probably as some liability issue in case he spontaneously perishes. They had to do it. So whatever. So it's like 8 a.m. and they come in and the doctor walks in and I'm like literally waking up. I'm like, hi. And he spoke a little English. He's like, surgery at noon. Okay. He'll have a cast for 4 to 6 weeks. All right. And discharge tomorrow. Okay. And then he just walks away. I'm like, thorough. Thank you. Whatever. So this was 8 and he has to fast until noon. And I was so cranky that I said he was like 4th on the schedule for surgery, which I'm used to. Like in the US, they try and do like the little kids sooner because fasting sucks for anyone, but especially kids. So there was no change though. My fussing did not help. And they came right in after that and they wanted to do his IV, which I'm like, if he doesn't have surgery until noon, like why do we have to do that now? I wanted to let him like be able to move freely and play a little bit, but they were insistent. So we went, like they have like a little nursing station, and we went and did the IV, and luckily it was like not too bad. I think it took like 2 tries. He did not like it. Fair enough. But he did pretty well. So we got that done, came back to the room, and then they wanted him dressed in like the hospital shirt, hospital pants, and then like the little surgical hat. So got him all suited up, called Dad to say hello, and called some family to just distract him. And eventually they came to get him about noon, and we walked to like the surgical wing together and waited there chatting a little bit while they were about to take him back. And then it was like the big goodbye, and he was so brave, and I gave him a big hug from Dad and told him, he's like, you're not gonna leave, are you? And I was like, no, buddy, like I'm gonna be right here waiting for you to get out. And he did not cry. I did not cry either. I'd like to point out I had tears behind my eyeballs, but they did not burst forth. So waited in the waiting room for the operating room, and they said it was going to take an hour, which I know, obviously it's an estimate, but like, hello, what do you think when it goes too long? Like, he's dead. I mean, I'm sorry, but so an hour goes by, an hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes. Now I'm pacing, and there's like an update board in Korean, but it still says in Korean that he's in surgery. So I'm like going to stand by the doors where the surgical wing open. And then there's like the recovery room right there. So like if both doors open, you can see in the recovery room just for like a half a second. So I'm like, maybe I'll catch a glimpse if he comes by, or maybe they like haven't updated it yet. So I'm waiting, and at almost 2 hours, the doors open because somebody was coming out, and there's a hospital like stretcher coming by, and you can't see anyone over the rails, and they had these cushions on the side. And then I saw Theo's face mask hanging from like the IV pole, and I was like, my boy. So I like frantically text Isaac, like, I think he's out. I think I just saw him. And so I run back to the board, and it had updated that he was out of surgery and in recovery. And they'd already told me that you can't come into recovery, which, fun fact, this is actually where we had Asher 7 years ago, 7.5, almost 8 years ago. And I was in that same recovery room, and I remember waking up, and it's just this long room where like, then there's like a desk over here for the nurses, and like I saw the clock on the wall, and then I look over here, and there's like an old Korean man waking up from surgery, and I'm like, okay. So I'm like just like standing out there knowing like it's gonna take a minute and waiting for the doctor. Like, I thought he was supposed to come update me. Spoiler, never got that. And then the doors open, and it's like the nurse, and the way they do like last names or like names here, it's like Kim Junyoung. Like Junyoung would be like your first name, Kim's your last name. So all of his paperwork says Kraft, Theo, Oscar. So they just keep calling him Oscar. So they're like, Oscar, baby, and I'm like, yeah, okay. And she's waving for me, and I'm like, okay, like we're not allowed to go in recovery, so I didn't know why she was getting me. And as soon as I started walking that way, I heard him. So I rushed right past her to my baby, and he was like in the stretcher in recovery, and he was like so upset and like coming off of the anesthesia, and I think he was in a bit of pain, and I think he was just really disoriented. So I'm like restraining him and holding him and trying to hold like oxygen on his face. It was like that for probably like 45 minutes. It was so tough. And I'm like trying to like hold him and comfort him, but also like let family know that he did make it out. He is okay. He's upset, but he's okay. But like literally anytime he'd start to like settle, if I moved, he'd like freak out again. So anyways, that was a bit gut-wrenching, and just trying to figure out like, is he really hurting? Is he just like out of it? And I think from the way the day progressed, he was just responding to the anesthesia. So we were in there for a little bit, and then they wheeled us to x-ray, which he was still kind of out of it. And I forgot to even tell Isaac this story, but like we get to the x-ray room, and he's still like upset, and I'm still feeling like very protective. And so they like wheel him into the x-ray room, and like the automatic doors start to close, and they like outside, they're telling me, you stay out there. Okay. And I'm hearing him fuss. And so like the automatic door's shut, but the doors like to go back through like the way the doctor goes is open. And I'm like, I'm usually such a pansy and like I want to follow the rules, but like I kept hearing my baby, and I thought like, I just want to see him, or if I could talk to him while they do it, like, Theo, you're okay, you're doing a good job, you know? So I like walk back there, and the guy like intercepts me, and he puts his hands on me, and he's like, no, like outside. And I'm just like, all of the adrenaline, all of the mama bear instincts, I'm like, all right. And I was like, I just want to see him. I just want to look. Is that okay? I just want to look. And he's like, no. And I was like, I want to look. And so he kind of like scoots over, and I look at him, and I just tell him like, you're okay. You're doing a good job. And then I like take a deep breath and walk away. So that's how I almost got in a fight with an x-ray tech. Yeah, but I didn't. So then he finishes x-ray. We go back to the room. Thankfully, we get him settled. He's still like irritated, but starting to calm down. He's now like recognized his blanket. Like I tried to give it to him in recovery, but he like wasn't even cognizant yet, which is like his like favorite comfort item. So we set up I set up Thomas the train for him, and they had told us that he could not have any fluid, any food, anything for 8 hours after surgery. So they're like at 10:30, which I'm like, shoot, at 10:30 I hope he's asleep. But they're like, at 10:30 he can have a sip of water, and if that is okay, then he can try food. So I'm like, no, I'm doing my due diligence on the internet. And like, hello, outpatient surgery is a thing where like you don't not eat for 8 hours. Like, so he had been seeing like the vending machines in the hospital. So while he was in surgery, there was a vending machine in the waiting room. So I bought him like a Sprite. So like 2 or 3 hours after, I was like letting him wet his mouth with a sip of Sprite, and he was doing really great, and he was like acting normal. He wasn't crying anymore. He closed his eyes for like 15 minutes, but like it was just like a really gradual improvement. And luckily, so now it's like 3:30 or 4, and Isaac was getting done with school, and I was so hungry because since he was fasting, I was trying to not eat also, and so I really wanted food. I wanted lunch. And so there's a Subway right outside, and I thought our hospital room was right at the front of the hospital. So if Judah, Asher, Zoe, and Isaac coming home from school, if they drove in front of the hospital and got out and waved, we could see them. So that was cute. I like put Theo up in the window so he could see them and wave and ignore that. And so we had Subway, got to see them. So I was eating because I'm like, sorry bud, like I'm so hungry. And he's like, can I have my sandwich? I was like, just a bite. I'm like, don't tell the nurses. And we got him a cookie and like broke it into like 8 pieces. I like gave it to him, and I'm like furiously trying to wipe the crumbs off of his mouth. And I'd even promised him, like, after surgery, you can have a fruit by the foot, which is like a beloved American treat they just learned about. And so I finally was like, okay, you can try some. And I'm trying to like not let the nurses know we're like directly disobeying orders, but spoiler, berry fruit by the foot will turn your mouth blue. So he's like blue, which I'm like, I guess the facade of not eating is gone. They never actually said anything. I don't think they paid enough attention to notice, but he started eating a little bit, started drinking a little bit, and I had told the nurse they wanted us to stay to the next day, and I was like, no thank you. I said, if he's doing good by 8 or 9, I would like to go home. And she's like, I'll let the doctor know. Like, yeah, right. I'm like, okay. So I'm telling Isaac, like, I think he's fine. Like, he was like just watching Thomas, and he'd gotten up to go potty. Like I helped him like the first 2 times. The third time he like got out by himself. He's like, I do it myself. I'm like, this kid does not need to be here. So I start packing our stuff, and we get a neighbor to come and sit with the kids so Isaac could come pick us up. And I literally pack all of our bags and start to walk out because I'd been telling them we were gonna leave, but I knew they weren't gonna believe us. So I like get to the elevator, and they see us at the nurse's station, and they freak out. So she comes over and she's like, oh, and I'm like, bye. And she tries to explain to us that like we haven't been discharged yet. And I was like, yeah, but we're leaving. And so she like runs to get somebody who speaks better English, as though this is like a language barrier issue and not just like a difference of opinions issue. So she brings somebody else back, and she's like, oh no, like the doctor hasn't signed off. I'm like, well, we're gonna go. So they like convinced me they need the doctor to sign off, but he's in the operating room, so we can't do it yet. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna go put this stuff in the car. And they're like, okay, like 30 minutes. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna put this stuff in the car, and then I'll be back. And then they're like, okay. So I take all the stuff downstairs. Oh my gosh, the fresh air is so good. So excited to be outside in the fresh air. Isaac's there, honestly could cry. So happy. And I am taking the wheelchair back upstairs, and before I can even get to the elevator again, they're calling to like make sure I haven't like left. They're like, we have the papers ready. I'm like, okay, good. So I get up there. They were so nice, honestly, for me being such like a strange foreigner. They give us the medication. We have to go pay our bill in the other building. Anyways, busted out. It was shocking. It was like 9:30. Theo wanted to listen to Chicken Nugget Dreamland, which if you haven't heard of that song, it's hilarious. So we drove down the road, belting out Chicken Nugget Dreamland. It's like, Theo, let's go get some chicken nuggets. So we drove to McDonald's. He never gets to come inside, #6kids. He went inside. He's like happy. I mean, he's like off pain meds, but like we were just done. We were done with the hospital. So we get home. He's so excited. Like some of the kids wake up and get to see him, and he's showing them like his arm. And I got him a toy at McDonald's. All you have to do is break your arm around here apparently to get a Happy Meal. And honestly, it has been like smooth sailing since then, which we kept waiting kind of like for it to catch up to him. Like we expected him to have a hard first night because that's how it had been after he broke his arm. The nights were really difficult. He literally slept through the night. He took 2 doses of ibuprofen the second day. And he's done great. He's been like pretty comfortable. We go back today for a checkup. They're gonna do a blood draw. I don't know why. They're gonna do another x-ray to check on how it's healing and then change his dressing. So a whirlwind. Everything is always more exciting when it's in a foreign language and a completely foreign way of doing things. But we made it by the grace of God. Friends checking in, support from home, and that boy is just like the bravest. So we'll let you know, but they said 4 to 6 weeks in the cast. So hopefully it's off before it's developing like the summer funk, you know, its own little ecosystem in there when it's hot outside. And hopefully this can be a chapter behind us, that little broken bone chapter. But I'll let you know how it goes. Thanks for checking in.